So apparently, it's Valentine's Day, the day of publishing this video. I had no idea. I thought to myself, maybe I should wait a couple hours, delay the filming so I could redo my notes and maybe reframe this video around something romance related. And I realized, I talk about romance a lot on RPG horror stories, and we've already done a couple romance dedicated tabletop tavern tips before, so I thought, let's just stick to what we're already doing. And so, here we are. Let's talk about something that does have something to do with Valentine's Day. I mean, it's about love, but more specifically, self-love for dungeon masters, because there is an issue I've seen getting more and more prevalent. DMing being treated like a sacrificial role, or worse, DMs being treated like servants. I do not like this mentality, and I know it sounds very dramatic. It is. I am being a little bit dramatic. What can I say? But it is an issue. I'm going to elaborate more on it in a second, but I do think it's a big problem that prevents people from getting into DMing, and it's a problem that causes a lot of DMs to burn out really early. So without further ado, guys, let's talk about what that problem is and how we can fix it. Let's get started. Okay, so the problem is twofold, and I think the first part of that fold is DMing and your spark. DMing for the things that you actually want to DM for. Now, I know I'm being vague again, but let me get into it with an example. In a recent episode of Tavern Adjacent, my podcast, I was talking with Fall Cosplay. She's awesome, and she's going to be playing a D&D game with me. And in that episode, we were talking about a character that she could play, and she said that she wanted to play a warrior nun. And you can see me instantly get so hyped. I mean, just the simple concept of someone playing a warrior nun, that sounds cool as heck. It's not the kind of character I've seen played in one of my D&D games before, and I think it can really fit into the world and the story that I'm building out for this little mini D&D campaign. Even if it's only going to be 3 sessions, I am even more excited for those 3 sessions because of this warrior nun character. I think there's so many cool things that she can do with that concept, and I was instantly hyped. And frankly, I still am. I got that passion. I got that spark. That is a character that I am so excited to work with and work alongside. It's gonna be awesome. But if she had recommended like, I don't know, futuristic K-pop star, I would have been a lot less enthusiastic. We often encourage people to create characters to fit into the campaign. But, guys, let's be honest. When it comes to actually saying, hey, you might want to workshop that concept, am I the only one who gets kind of hesitant, kind of awkward? I mean, we're told to prioritize player agency above everything else. Like, top priority is player agency. And player agency is amongst the top priorities. I think the other top priority, though, is making sure that you, as the DM, actually like this game. Because if you don't, no one else is going to have fun. Your passion shows through in everything that you do. And I think part of what makes me so excited to get up and DM is because the characters, fit the world. Now, I don't want to recommend you control everything and railroad and take away all player agency, but I'm just saying that if something is way outside of your comfort zone as a dungeon master, if something makes you feel uncomfortable, like actively, yeah, it's okay to call that out. There's this expectation that DM should just be alright with it. That when push comes to shove, the DM should just get shoved, especially when it comes to character creation. But I'm sorry, I think that's an unhealthy mentality to have. It doesn't just go down to characters, though. I mean, think of all of the things a DM needs to deal with. What about creating NPCs? I saw a video that talked about DMing in a way that I thought was very unhealthy. I mean, I thought there was great advice in that video, but one of the points was that NPCs are just fodder. You shouldn't care about your NPCs, and doing so is a major mistake because they're inevitably going to be tortured. Now, I know the guy was just being emphatic, but I still think it's an unhealthy mentality to have. I mean, Brenly Mulligan, Matt Mercer, we're going to talk about them later, but they're not fools for having their favorite NPCs. You can tell Matt Mercer cares about Gilmore. You can tell Brenly Mulligan cares about Zelda and Fantasy High. And those DMs are not idiots for doing that. Those DMs clearly like those characters, and you can tell. You bet your butt that the cast can tell as well. It's okay for you to be passionate about NPCs and to actually like the NPCs that you create. That passion shows through. if you go into creation with the mentality of, I'm not going to care about anything because it's all just fodder, you're not going to create anything good. Ever. It's going to lack passion, it's going to lack the spark, it's going to lack the fire. I mean, think about if you're a player and think like that with your characters. Now, obviously, I'm sure there are games where this fits. You know, games where everything's just meat to be churned through, and that's fine. But a lot of games that I talk about and that people talk about with me on RPG Horror Stories or, okay, let's be honest, in RPG Horror Stories, because that's usually what you guys are sending me. Look, a lot of those games are games with a lot of role-playing. I can tell that you guys like role-playing and storytelling as much as I do, and in those games, that kind of mentality is like a death grip. It's a really bad thing for you to have. And we've been talking about lore and story up until this point. It goes to mechanics too. I mean, what about a DM who is uncomfortable handling min-maxed builds, for example? Like, look, this might be a crazy, insane hot take, but I don't think that you need to just deal with it if one of your players has a build that's way outside of your comfort zone. And by the way, this is coming from a DM who is DMing for 5 highly optimized player characters. I have insanely difficult encounters. They optimize the crap out of their characters because they have to, and they've made their characters pretty darn impressive. Like, I'm happy as crap with how my players have handled my encounters. They have optimal strategies, rotations, they've perfectly distributed their magic items so that everyone has the perfect thing for their build, with the exception of a situation involving a hammer. I'm not gonna get into it. But the point is, yeah, I have some powerful freaking player characters. But the reason that I have that is because I wanted that. I have encounters that are really strong. If my players were, for example, way less in tune with what was going on with the game, if one of the players was mid-maxing and really underpowered, really holding back the rest of the party, I think it would be okay for me to talk to that player, to ask them if they need help with their build, or to ask them if they even want to stick around in the first place. Because mechanics-wise, I think a DM should also be okay with admitting that sometimes they don't got it. You can't always balance around a single player who's carrying all the weight by being the min-max superhero, or a single player who's holding everyone back. That's a pain in the butt. Alright, sometimes, as a DM, maybe you can't balance around a group of super optimized player characters. Maybe that's outside of your comfort zone. The point of this entire segment, and this entire video, is just explaining this. DMs need to be more okay, and I think we as a community need to be more okay with DMs admitting that sometimes they don't got it. Sometimes things are outside their comfort zone. Sometimes the tone of the campaign doesn't fit what the DM was wanting, and sometimes the DM doesn't want to change everything to fit the new tone of the campaign. Sometimes the DM wants to refocus the campaign around a storyline they actually want to DM for and are actually interested in. And sometimes it's okay for them to tell their players about that. And by sometimes, I mean the vast majority of the time, okay? Look, I know there's going to be a bad faith argument in the comments about how I'm encouraging DMs to be the main characters and encouraging DMs to be dictators over their players. That is not what I'm saying. There is a middle ground between being a dictator and a doormat. And I think we need to be way better at finding it. But oftentimes, I find that as a community, a lot of people lean towards the doormat. Why bother to be passionate? Because it doesn't matter, right? You're just the DM. You're there to serve the players, not yourself. But that's crap. You are there for yourself too. You're also part of this group. You should also be having fun. It's funny because I think a lot of the people who indirectly recommend these unhealthy mentalities, these unreasonable expectations, it's funny because a lot of the same people also talk about the Matt Mercer effect, and I'm sorry, but I just don't see the Matt Mercer effect as that big of a deal. I never have. Because do you know what makes Matt Mercer such a good DM? Like, everyone talks about the voice acting and the budget and the sets and all that. But frankly, Matt Mercer was a great DM when Critical Role first started, way before they had the crazy budget that they had. Obviously, he was a very talented voice actor even back then. But that's not what makes the show good. It never, ever was. People always miss, in my opinion, what makes shows like Critical Role or Dimension 20 so incredible. Because it's not voice acting, it's not budget, it's passion. It's passion, all right? I can tell Matt Mercer freaking loves what he's doing. I mean, you can see how much he loves this game. It's freaking infectious, man. And it goes for every dungeon master that you can think of who has a somewhat successful show. When a DM loves their game, loves their players, their world, their NPCs, when they feel that passion, dude, you can see it because it infects you too. It's the best feeling. It's why I love it so much. I mean, this kind of creative infection, it goes for a lot of things beyond just D&D, but I feel like with D&D and TTRPGs, it really comes across, you know, because you have that somewhat behind the scenes look where you're actually seeing the people work on this in real time, and therefore you can really see their passion and their drive and that fire that's just so fun to watch. The actual plays that I watch and don't get into, every single time is because of the same reason. Because I don't think the DM cares. Because the DM is dry. Because the DM doesn't have that fire, that spark. And who can blame them? If you're a DM who's playing with murder hobo players who are going to kill their way through all of your NPCs anyway, why bother to get passionate about any of them? If you're playing with players who ignored your session 0 where you talked about your tone and brought in characters that don't fit at all with the tone that you tried to set, why would you get into this at all? Why would you feel any passion? A lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, too bad. All right, the DM made their choice. They got behind the chair. The players made a different decision. They need to deal with that now. Why? Why is it always the DM solely who needs to compromise, who needs to shoulder, who needs to figure it out? I think I speak for a lot of DMs when I say that, frankly, there are times where I don't want to figure it out, where I'm tired of figuring it out, where I'm tired of compromises, where I want some help every now and then. All right, if I say, hey, look, we're creating good aligned characters, I don't want players coming back at me saying, well, I want to be evil, what the heck, you're ruining my player agency. Like, I'm sorry, man, but that's a boundary that I'm setting. I'm not interested in DMing an evil campaign. That's not what I want. And if you do want that, that's fine, but you won't find it with me. And I think it's furthermore okay for DMs to find players who are actually going to fit their vision for what they're going to enjoy working on. Look, if you give up on NPCs that you care about, a world that you care about, a tone that you want, I don't know how to say this, man, but it's gonna show. If you're a player who doesn't care about how your DM actually feels about the game they're running, you're gonna figure it out real soon. Because DM who has no passion, who has no drive, who lacks that fire, it becomes really obvious. The point of this video is just to say, I think we need to normalize DMs giving a crap about themselves more and prioritizing themselves sometimes, okay? DMing does not need to be a sacrificial position or a service position where you just serve your players and their every whim and every need, okay? DMing is collaborative. You're just another guy at the table, okay? It is not your burden to shoulder every single thing that happens at the game, whether it be a problem player or a story or lore thing or a mechanical thing your players need to deal with. You have an important role as the dungeon master, a role that you yourself chose, probably. But at the same time, you don't need to solely handle everything. It's okay to just ask your players for help, even if the help is just asking them to please respect your boundaries when it comes to how much homebrew you can take, or what kind of rules you're okay with, or what kind of lore you want to include in your game. All of those things are okay. You are not a lesser DM by any means for setting reasonable expectations for what you're doing. That makes you a great DM because you know what you want, you know what you're doing, and I'm sure you're going to be great at it. Okay, so every time I talk about something like this, someone gets upset at me, so I'm sure I'm gonna get yelled at a lot. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Apparently, we're almost at 100 episodes of D&D advice on this channel, which is crazy, by the way. Like, I know we've done a lot of RPG horror stories, but this series we uploaded less frequently, so it's kind of insane to see it get to 100 episodes. So, I don't know what I'm going to do for 100 episodes. I mean, if you guys have any ideas, please let me know. I've got a couple concepts, but they're just loose right now, so just give me any ideas you have. But in any case, if you guys enjoyed this episode, then please leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out that aforementioned RPG horror story series, where we talk about the best of the worst of Dungeons & Dragons. It's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own tips or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. Love your party and love yourself to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.